guys are back there too. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this special Public Finance Committee meeting to order for November 18th, 2022. My name is Henry D'Angelo. I'm the chair of the board's finance committee. So we'll move down the agenda. At this point in time, I'm going to be asking for a roll call. Members, Chair Seal.
Here.
Member Eek.
Here.
Member Gibson.
I'm present.
And we have regrets, Jen, Member Lawson, Member McKendrick, and Member Gale will be arriving a few minutes later. So at this point in time, I'm going to ask if there's any declarations of conflict or pecuniary interest by the members. Seeing none, we'll move to item 4, which is to adopt minutes of the previous meeting. There's no minutes to adopt, so we can move to item number 5. Which would be a presentation from the Niagara Regional Police Service for the 2023 proposed operating budget. So at this point in time, I'll turn it over to the chief.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. If you could just a few minutes and we'll get the presentation set up.
Yeah, sounds good.
So good morning. Each year, the journey that gets us to this presentation of our proposed operating budget represents a significant amount of work, thoughtful and careful consideration to ensure that what we're presenting reflects the current reality that we're facing to ensure the ongoing safety of our community while also being fiscally responsible. I want to thank you, Finance Committee Chair D'Angelo, board members, staff members, and members of our community for the opportunity to present our proposed 2023 operating budget. This time also gives us the opportunity to give some context as well to the current pressures that we're facing as an organization, as well as the opportunities that we can capitalize on. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our entire senior leadership team, in particular, Ms. Laura Rouleau, our manager of finance, and her finance team for their time, dedication, and efforts throughout this comprehensive process. Under the Police Services Act, the board, as the board is aware, it's mandated that all provincial adequacy standards are upheld by the board and that we continue to deliver adequate and effective policing to our communities. The expectation by the community, the board, and funding providers is that police services are containing costs, operating as effectively and efficiently as possible, while also ensuring the sustainability of policing. As you can see outlined in the graph, calls for service continue to climb in 2020 due to the, but we did see a minor dip in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2021 and onward, overall calls for service were also impacted by the new Priority 6 call system. Beginning May 1st, 2021, the NRPS through the communications unit began using a new set of priority dispatch codes, including Priority 6 calls. These included various calls that do not require dispatch and were added to track calls that were coming into the communications unit. To date, 2022 calls for service are trending towards a 2% increase over the same period in 2021, which, as you can see, was a record number of calls for service. We've also seen a continuing trend of increases in caseloads for our major crime unit, with 6 homicide investigations in 2022 thus far, plus 2 opioid-related manslaughter charges. What is often not captured is the immense amount of work that goes into case preparation once an investigation has concluded, and the demand that's placed upon officers within the unit, often while continuing to be tasked with new investigations that may occur. Along with the backdrop of increasing calls for service, Niagara Public Health analyzed opioid-related sudden death statistics between 2017 and 2021. What they found is that over that 5-year period, the mortality rate in Niagara has steadily increased, higher than the provincial average. While we don't have confirmed statistics for 2022 as of yet, in 2021, we saw 165 confirmed opioid-related deaths, which equates to approximately 14 lives lost each and every month. In addition to those confirmed deaths, life-saving naloxone was reportedly used 1,178 times in Niagara. Suffice to say, without that measure in place, the death toll would have been much, much higher. In the previous slide, I referenced 2 opioid-related manslaughter charges. To back up slightly, the NRPS Opioid Enforcement and Education Unit was established in 2017 to investigate and reduce the availability of opioids in Niagara. Operating as part of the province's Community Safety and Policing Grant, the 2 constables assigned to the unit are mandated to raise public awareness and provide education regarding the dangers of opioid misuse. The unit learned of a growing number of criminal investigations that were occurring across Canada, which assesses the causal association between drug trafficking and overdose-related deaths. Since January 22, the unit has adopted this same model of investigation into opioid-related sudden deaths. To date, they have laid 3 sets of serious criminal charges in relation to overdose deaths, including 2 charges of manslaughter. This new approach is victim-centric, allowing members of the unit to focus on the families and the victims who have been impacted by opioid-related sudden deaths. The alarming number of opioid sudden death investigations experienced within our community not only involves investigators from that unit, but also draws upon resources including frontline officers, detectives, and investigators from our forensic and services unit. Over the span of the last 3 years, from 2019 to 2021, we have seen a dramatic 158% increase in our CMP OCEAN referrals. The Operational Child Exploitation Analysis Network, or OCEAN, is a database used to manage referrals from communication service providers and other reporting bodies such as cyber tips. Once the provided information is imported, automated, or manually into the system, it's cross-checked with previous existing data and linkages. OCEAN imported referrals can then be assessed by the investigators and forwarded to the appropriate police agency of jurisdiction for further investigation. It's important to note that these referrals are in addition to the complaints that are already received from our uniformed members, cybertip.ca, and Crime Stoppers, and referred to the ICE unit for further investigation. This chart shows the investigative capacity of the ICE unit. The overwhelming trend that you see is an increase in OCEAN referrals and a resulting increase in referrals not investigated. The percentage of OCEAN files not investigated has steadily increased over the last 3 years, from 29% in 2019, 38% in 2020, and 69% in 2021. This presents a significant risk both to the service and to the board, not having the resources in place to effectively investigate these serious crimes. With this current reality before us, the Police Service Board's 2022 to 2025 strategic plan serves as a 4-year roadmap to guide our service to deliver policing services effectively and efficiently to all residents and visitors within the Niagara region. The strategic plan, as you are aware, was developed after extensive consultation with stakeholders and our community members. In the creation of the proposed 2023 operating budget before you today, we've taken direction from that roadmap to ensure that we are on the right path to achieving the 4 strategic goals that are laid out in the plan, and those being public safety, community engagement and collaboration, continuous improvement and organizational excellence, and member wellness and resiliency. The proposed operating budget has been created to ensure that the appropriate resources are in place to transform the board's strategic vision into reality. A major impact of the COVID-19 pandemic was the exponential increase of time that people spent online. And in turn, it's not surprising that we have seen a drastic increase in technological and internet child exploitation investigations. Currently, the Internet Child Exploitation Unit, or ICE, is understaffed and overwhelmed. As previously mentioned, the 158% increase in referrals alone from the RCMP is beyond the investigative capacity of the unit. The reality is that our detectives must triage these investigations involving some of the most vulnerable members of our community and focus their investigative efforts on the most prolific offenders, simply due to the sheer volume of complaints that are received. The unit is currently unable to conduct proactive investigations related to online luring offenses of children in the Niagara region due to this heavy caseload. Adding 1 detective constable to the ICE unit will allow members to respond effectively to the increased demands imposed by these RCMP referrals, while also proactively ensuring that children are not lured by predators in the first place. This will enhance our ability to support victims, as well as improve outcomes for victims of crime, as identified in Objective 3.33 under the strategic plan, which speaks to ICE education and safety presentations. Similarly, the Technological Crimes Unit is also experiencing exponential growth within the unit, not having grown since its original inception in 2014. Since then, the unit has absorbed an 89% increase in annual requests for assistance from across the service. As you can appreciate, as technology advances, so does the complexity and the length of time that's required to complete each investigation that's coming into the unit. The officers within this unit also must dedicate appropriate time to maintain their expert qualification credentials to ensure that they are a step ahead of increasingly sophisticated criminals and the ever-changing technology landscape. As I spoke earlier of the increased demands of referrals to our ICE unit, that also impacts the Technological Crimes Unit to analyze the devices that are seized and gather the necessary evidence to further these complex investigations. In addition, with the increase in violent crime and homicide investigations, the demand on the Technological Crime Unit has also grown. For example, in 2016, the Homicide Unit seized 11 devices that the Tech Unit was required to examine. Comparatively, in 2021, the Homicide Unit seized 90 devices that all required digital forensic examination. It's important to note that these seizures are in addition to the other devices that are seized by frontline members and by investigative units from across the service that must also be examined. By adding 3 detective constables to the Tech Crimes Unit, we will be able to increase the ability to identify potentially vulnerable victims of violence, internet child exploitation, and other internet-based crimes, while ensuring that vital evidence is processed in a timely manner and that we are meeting the strict disclosure requirements that have been imposed by the court. As I spoke to earlier in highlighting the emerging trends and pressures of our service, We are continuing to see devastating impacts of the opioids are having on our community. With that in mind, we have examined the current staffing models of the 3-district street crime unit and found that it has been chronically understaffed and that workloads are no longer manageable. In 2020, in recognition of the significant population growth and development taking place within the 3-district boundaries and the resulting increased workload our frontline members were experiencing, the service increased staffing levels by 2 officers per platoon. Those increased workloads have also negatively impacted our investigators' ability to successfully conduct complex investigations. While we've seen excellent cooperation across investigative units within the service to support these investigations, we have reached a point where we need to provide an additional level of self-sufficiency within the unit, recognizing that we cannot continuously pull investigators away from their home units and negatively impact their own caseloads. By adding 1 detective constable to the unit, there would be increased operational efficiency for labor-intensive investigations such as drug and property crime offenses, as well as increased ability to proactively address community-based concerns. Uniform reporting clerks operate within our records and information management unit, reviewing all criminal and non-criminal reports for accuracy and ensuring that all Canadian Centre for Justice and Community Safety statistics requirements are met. Offense coding is accurate and that all charge information lines up with the court folders. Given current staffing levels, they are unable to meet these responsibilities on a continuous basis. Adding 1 UCR clerk will allow the unit to review, analyze, and classify more reports each month, increasing the quality of the data submission and ensuring that this mandatory requirement of the Statistics Act is met on a monthly basis. This increase would further our objective to foster transparency and enhance public understanding of the police service. The current service delivery model for the care of persons in custody and management in our central holding unit has been extensively examined, and it's been determined that it needs new and innovative change. We are currently seeing escalating overtime costs, supervisory and member retention concerns, and a decrease in the quality of Crown briefs. In addition, the current model is proving to be increasingly challenging to maintain, with one of the main drivers being the absence of a sustainable backfill strategy. That means that all vacancies of uniformed sergeants, if they are on annual leave, if they're off sick, are filled using overtime, which has resulted in a consistent increase in overtime spending over the last several years. Consistent with what is currently in place in the St. Catharines Courthouse, the restructuring of central holding would place the responsibility with special constables, including supervision. This would also include a mechanism to address shift vacancies of special constable supervisors with acting supervisors. It's anticipated this change will result in noticeable savings in overtime spending and provide a more cost-effective model to manage persons in custody. The proposed restructuring of the unit would remove 8 sergeants and add 4 special constable supervisors, 3 detective sergeants, and 1 sergeant to the mobile support unit. The creation of a strategic planning and innovation unit directly addresses Objective 6 of Goal 3 of the strategic plan, which will facilitate the establishment of the Office of Continuous Improvement and Innovation by providing a dedicated full-time civilian manager. The unit will allow our service to execute key initiatives identified in the board's strategic plan, as well as establish a framework for continuous improvement to realize efficiencies within the service. To be careful at continuous improvement, to be successful at continuous improvement, it's vital that we have a project organizational structure that is cross-functional, where projects are identified as part of a service-wide strategic planning process. Under strong leadership, this unit will drive projects forward while identifying best practices within the private sector that can be transposed into the public sector. Further, the creation of a new digital evidence management unit speaks to Objective 4 regarding the modernization of service delivery. Digital evidence management systems streamline the process to capture, manage, and share all platforms of digital evidence with police and our judiciary partners. The service has already purchased and is using the cloud-based software for digital evidence management systems known as DEMS, with the strategic goal of expanding the Connected Officer program. The current model in place, which utilizes both sworn and civilian members who require workplace accommodations, does not have the operational capacity to expand the DEMS project into a fully integrated system that has the capability to keep pace with the ever-increasing volume of digital evidence that's coming into the service. Additionally, adding cellular data and electronic duty book notes or e-notes software for the Connected Officer program speaks to the objective within the strategic plan of modernizing service delivery, which will result in efficiencies in processing evidence. This will extend our goal of innovation to frontline members to better meet their information and intelligence requirements while creating efficiencies and operational excellence for the service as a whole. This mobile access to various databases and resources will enhance real-time interactions with the community, as well as keep officers connected and safe as they respond to calls for service by delivering vital information while both at the scene and away from their vehicles. Since the arrival of a service psychologist in 2019, the demand for clinical service has increased substantially and continues to grow. As widely reported within the media, the current climate of policing and the pressures and inherent risks that our officers experienced have been highlighted in recent months with the deaths of officers in Toronto, York, South Simcoe, and British Columbia. These are senseless and heartbreaking tragedies that have had a profound impact on the family, friends, colleagues, and the extended policing family, as we all bear this weight of tragedy together. Their deaths highlight the inherent risks that police officers face on a daily basis while simply serving and protecting their communities. In Niagara and across the country, we've seen an alarming increase in violent crime, an increased prevalence of firearms and weapons that not only jeopardize the safety of our community, but also the safety of our members. The increased demand that we've seen in member support signals the engagement and buy-in from our members. However, it's putting pressure on the one current clinician to the point where individual needs are still being addressed, but it's increasingly difficult to continue progressing member support services and addressing the strategic needs of the service. The addition of a mental health clinician would provide the capacity to support members while continuing to push forward on a strategic level to improve overall member wellness and promoting a culture of resiliency, which is an objective identified within the strategic plan. Also within the realm of member wellness, we know that our people are our most valuable asset. Currently, the service has one disability management specialist. The demands placed on this single incumbent far outpaces the ability to effectively manage the needs of our members while also providing the dedicated support when members are out of the workplace or who need support returning to the workplace. The addition of a second specialist would reduce overall lost time and the duration of such incidents, while also reducing significant costs associated with accommodated members who are in unauthorized and unbudgeted positions. This will ensure that our people are supported and assisted in returning to the workplace in a more timely and meaningful way. As detailed throughout this presentation, our 2023 budget approach is evidence-based and in alignment with the board's strategic plan. The 10 program changes that we've presented to you today are investments towards enhancing public safety and organizational excellence. This year, our program changes total $997,425, excuse me, which represents a 0.6% increase over our 2022 approved operating budget. This annual cost for these 10 programs based on 2023 budget dollars is approximately $1.8 million, nearly $800,000 of which will be deferred to the 2024 budget to reflect the staggered implementation of these programs throughout the 2023 calendar year. When we look at the impact of the base operating budget, our proposed 2023 increases include cost pressures that are impacting our budget exclusive of the program changes that I mentioned. This year, these pressures will increase our base budget by 4.9%, or approximately $8.3 million over our 2022 budget. As reported previously to the board, 90% of our operating budget are costs associated to salary, wages, and benefits, and therefore represents the majority of the base budget increase for 2023, a total of $7 million, and are outlined as follows. In 2022, we presented 2 program changes implemented effective July 1st, 2022, that included 4 detective constables to our major crime unit and 3 constables in our emergency task unit. The 2023 base budget includes an increase of approximately $500,000 to bring these 2 program changes to an annual budget amount. $3.9 million can be attributed to the negotiated wage increases and benefit enhancements between the Police Service Board and the 2 associations representing the sworn and civilian members of the service. New allowance was negotiated for frontline members, which will pay them an additional 1.5% of a constable salary, resulting in a base budget increase of approximately $800,000. An increase to statutory deductions such as the Canada Pension Plan, employment insurance, and employer-paid benefits such as pension and extended health benefits are projected to be $1.8 million over the 2022 approved budget. The 2023 operating budget includes assumptions on the 2023 statutory deduction rate increases that are not yet published. The 2023 budget increases for CPP and EI premiums is anticipated to be 6.9% over the 2022 budget assumptions. Further, the service will realize increases to extended health benefits of 12%, which reflects the cost of enhanced negotiated benefits, as well as inflationary pricing impacts. Other non-compensation cost pressures that we're experiencing include the increased cost of fuel to operate our fleet of vehicles. The 2022 budget fuel rate was set at $1.25 per liter based on a 10-year average. However, since that rate was determined, the industry has experienced a significant price increase to this commodity. The 2023 fuel rate is based on a fuel price of $1.76 per liter, as recommended by the region, and represents an increase of $600,000. The cost associated with computer software licensing is expected to increase by approximately $1 million. This increase can mainly be attributed to the rise in licensing fees for software licenses, including Microsoft 365, digital evidence management, and cloud-based software solutions. Further, the increase includes cost of new licenses for peer support, asset tracker, and software for the technological crime unit that was previously funded by a provincial grant. For the 2023 budget year, the service was awarded additional provincial grant funding of approximately $700,000, which supports 5 specific initiatives to address public safety needs within our community. And lastly, our other inflationary cost pressures to supply costs, such as vehicle parts and maintenance, minor equipment, office and building costs, as well as to uniform costs, have also contributed to a base budget pressure of approximately $400,000. To recap, the base budget increase over the 2022 budget is 4.9%. Plus, we received an additional 0.2% in regional capital funding for a total base budget increase of 5.1%. With the addition of the 0.6% increase in program changes, the service is proposing an operating budget increase of 5.7%. It's important to point out that the budget assumptions that are being used to develop this proposed budget, these assumptions highlight the risks as well as the opportunities and are outlined as follows. That third-party funding and recoveries, such as provincial grant funding and the OLG transfer payments that we receive from the City of Niagara Falls, will remain at the current levels. Legislative changes such as the Community Safety and Policing Act of 2019 are yet to be enacted and are expected to be implemented during the 2023 budget year, and its potential net financial impact on police services is still to be determined. Through your support of the 2023 program changes, the service will be well positioned to implement the board's strategic plan. Demands to the front line and investigative complexities can often place unexpected significant financial impacts during the course of a year. And the 2023 proposed operating budget includes investment to capitalize on emerging technologies and innovation in policing. This concludes our presentation to the board, Mr. Chair. And with that, I will turn it back to you for any questions that the board may have regarding our proposed 2023 operating budget.
Thank you, Chief McCulloch, for such a detailed budget presentation. I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank you and your team for bringing forward the 2023 budget. I know a lot of work goes into formulating a budget to meet the needs of the service and also to serve the citizens of Niagara. So I thank you for all those efforts. So at this time, I was going to suggest that we receive the presentation, then we will put the budget on the floor, and then we can ask all the questions either of the presentation or of the budget at that point in time, the budget report. So I have moved by Chair Steele, seconded by Member Eek, that this presentation be received. All those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. And then I have, so now we're into new business, which is the 2023 Niagara Regional Police Service and Police Services Board proposed operating budget. The service report dated November 8th, providing the board with the 2023 proposed operating budget for the police service and the police services board, resulting in a total net expenditure budget for indirect allocations of $177,857,755 million, which reflects the cost of providing adequate and effective police services in the Niagara region at a 5.7% increase to the service's 2022 budget. The Finance Committee recommendation on the floor here is to receive and approve the 2023 operating budget for the Police Service Board and the resulting in the total net expenditure budget and indirect allocations of the 177,857,755 million, and to submit a consolidated budget of the service and the board to regional council for approval. I have member Eek and member Gibson putting that on the floor for discussion. And at this point in time, I will open it up to members for questions to the chief and to the senior staff. Member Gibson.
Thank you, Chair, and through just a point of clarification here, and I'm just wondering if the public looking at this may be a little confused by it. If we go to the summary chart of program changes, we have annual costs and then we have 2023 impact. As you can see there, the numbers for 2023 impact are substantially lower than the annual costs. Perhaps we could just explain that a little more clearly, how those numbers are reached.
Through you, Chair, I'll have our finance manager, Ms. Laura Rouleau, provide an explanation for that.
Thank you.
Through to the chair, the 997,000 represents the cost impact to the 2023 budget, because we will be staggering the implementation of those programs. Some will actually start April 1st, 2023. And that's mainly because our budget won't even go forward to council until January because of the elections this year. The budgets are late. Most of our uniform program changes, we tend to have those implemented July 1st just because of the delay in hiring for those detective sergeants and replacing the frontline staff. So the 1.7 million represents what the annual cost of actually running those programs from January to December for a 12-month period. The 997 represents what it will cost us for the 2023 period. And then, as the chief mentioned in his presentation, there is a deferral of 800,000 that will be added to the 2024 budget. So we want to be transparent and to show the public what the true cost of the program is, even though we're staggering that for 2023.
Okay, thank you. Through your chair, that clearly explains that difference there. So, and I have one more question, Chair, if I may. I'm concerned about the growth in Niagara and the police keeping up numbers wise of officers to the growth that's expected to come here. I don't see anything in here about additional officers. I know just a few years back we hired 40, but with the growth that's expected here in the next 10 years, are we building that into our increase and our request for the budget? I would think that if you worked it out math wise, we'd have to hire probably another 10 or 15 officers every year to keep up to the growth that's expected to meet the national standards, that sort of thing. So I'm just curious if we're looking at that for next year or the year after.
Through you, Chair, you're correct. We have not included any additional frontline officers for the 2023 budget or proposed budget. We continue to monitor what's taking place on the road and certainly are alive to all of the growth that's happening across the region, exponential growth, quite frankly. And through our frontline workload study, we are continuing to assess the pressures that the increased calls for service are having. And again, we've talked about bringing forward evidence-based approach in how we arrive at our budget, and if and when the evidence supports us bringing forward a request for additional frontline officers, we'll do so.
Okay, thank you, Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you, Member Gibson. Any further questions? Member Chair Steele.
Thank you. Chief, the OLG transfer, which Niagara Falls pays for policing, when is that a contract that has set dates on it as far as when it's renegotiated or when we would sit down with either the OLG or the city of Niagara Falls?
Through you, Chair, the agreement is actually between the city of Niagara Falls and OLG, and the city of Niagara Falls has agreed to pay $4.6 million from what they receive from OLG to the Niagara Regional Police Service. I'm sorry, $4.2 million. And obviously with COVID, the casinos were impacted significantly. So that funding was reduced. But we have no indication from the city of Niagara Falls that that there's any plan to change that $4.2 million funding that we receive, either to reduce or increase that amount. If that answers your question.
No, that's fine. And just to follow up to that, with regards to, and obviously with COVID and the shutting down of the casino, things were a little bit different in that area. But pre-COVID, as we moved through this, and since the casino is back operating at 100% level, are we seeing any increases of calls or events that go on there where compared to pre-COVID, is it costing our service more to be part of this compared to what it is now or was?
I mentioned we're projecting about a 2% increase in calls for service for 2022 based on the current trend. So there is an increased number of calls. That's across the entire service. So without doing a deeper dive or analysis, it would be difficult for me to determine whether or not there's what amount can be attributed specifically to the casino district.
Okay, so moving into 2023, would it be wise for this board to submit a letter to the OLG with regards to the payment that we receive as a police force? That, you know, if it's the same money that we've been receiving for X amount of years, obviously our costs are going up. You can just see with gas and the increased taxes that are being put on gas right now, it's costing our taxpayer a lot more. That, you know, we should be, you know, with the proper information being sent to the OLG, that, you know, every so many years these should be looked at. Would that be wise for our board to proceed with that?
Through you, Chair, it may be a wise option for this board to consider, although I'm not sure that the letter should be going to the OLG. I think the letter should be going to the city of Niagara Falls. That's where the money from OLG flows through to. And then we receive payment through to or from the Niagara Falls.
I understand that, but in your first answer to my first question was regarding, it was a deal that OLG and Niagara Falls has, and then we just got a check kind of thing, where we weren't at the table, I assume, at the beginning.
So originally, if we date back to, I believe, 1997, when we first entered into an agreement with OLG, the agreement was between OLG and the board, and we received funding directly from OLG. There was a new arrangement that was arrived at through our new funding model arrived at by OLG, which essentially keeps the Niagara Regional Police Services Board out of that arrangement. So all of the funding, including what was previously attributed from OLG to the board, is now captured in the payment that the city of Niagara Falls received. There might be an opportunity to meet with OLG and city officials to, you know, quite frankly, I don't think it's appropriate that the money that we have to go to the city of Niagara Falls, which is not responsible for policing. It's not really the appropriate mechanism, and it in all likelihood should be coming directly from OLG to the Police Services Board.
Okay, all right. So that's something that we can bring up in 2023 then.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, just to add a little history, because I go back to when it was converted to going to City of Niagara Falls. I was there with the service. We were negotiating to maintain, or we wanted more than 4.2, but it's been 4.2 since the original contract. So it hasn't changed at all, but at least we were able to maintain that with the City of Niagara Falls. So there was discussions I don't know where we stand right now, but yeah, again, we could bring back that, and then as chair, you can have some discussions with the city of Niagara Falls. So good point though. Okay, member Eek.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Along the same lines, with respect to the funding from Niagara Falls, it's my understanding it's pretty much remained static as the chair has indicated. And I'm wondering if the funding from the OLG to the city of Niagara Falls, whether or not it's received any incremental increase over time. And from our perspective, from a policing aspect, I'm wondering if we can make a business case approach as to what we figure the manpower, et cetera, and the calls associated with the casino and the time taken versus that 4.2, whether or not indeed we exceed that funding that's being provided. So I don't know, Chief, if you're able or feel that your staff could pull together some type of understanding of cost appropriate to that facility.
So through your chair, that's something that we could certainly put together based on our current staffing that is assigned to the Casino Patrol District, and as well as detectives and frontline officers, and we could arrive at a cost to see how it compares with the $4.2 million that we receive.
Thank you for those comments, because I think it's most important. It's not necessarily just the cost, but it's, as you indicated, the association with detectives and policing and so forth to make our city safe and effective for everyone. So if we could do that, I think that would be an approach that we might look at. Thank you.
Thank you, member Eek. I just want to highlight though, it's just so that we're clear, this is mostly for the public. It's not the casino facility that we're policing. It's as the chief mentioned, it's a casino district. So yeah, that's very clear, because people think we're just sending police to the casino and it's 4.2 million. That would be a very high number, but it's the district. And I know the chief is, this has been an ongoing issue for a long time, identifying the costs and trying to get additional funding through either OLG or through Niagara Falls. So it's, there's been many letters of sent throughout this process, but I know the chief will continue that process to see how much more we can get back to recoup our costs, because as it has been mentioned by a couple of members, costs continually rise. I'll go to member Gill.
Thank you. And I just wanted to touch on this, but I wanted to hear the chief, because you know I was involved in the conversations with the mayor back 2 terms ago about this. And I caution this board on going directly to the casino people, the OLG, because they'd be quick to cut this off for the city of Niagara Falls too. I think that the route is through the city of Niagara Falls on this. Verbally is all we have with them. They agreed to keep it at 4.2 million, but there was a lot of pushback 6 years ago when I was chair at the time, and I met with them, and being a Niagara Falls councillor, it helped being there in these meetings, because there was the position which you explained, the OPP cover everything inside the casino. So is it worth 4.2 million for the calls outside of the casino? So then we got into the case of how many calls they thought were related to casino, how many weren't. We also had, at the time when it first started, the offices under the Rainbow Bridge with the casino unit, that there was questions of whether, how big it was, how much staffing it was, how much was actually related to the casino, and how many were the calls that you would have had down the hotel sector down there. So there was tension between the city of Niagara Falls, us, but the biggest thing is don't go to the OLG, because I think they could just say, no, nothing to anybody. We're done on that. You're making enough with the business coming down here, the employees that you are in this area and that. So I would never suggest going to OLG. I think the chief was right. I remember the last chief saying to me, I don't want to go hat in hand to the city of Niagara Falls. And I agree that that's not the position of the chief. But it'd have been nice if this had been laid out better. But I think we should be pretty happy at 4.2 million. Not to say we shouldn't try, but I think that we should be talking to the mayor and whoever it is of the city of Niagara Falls to see if there's anything extra. But they'll be quick to come back and say, justify your request on this. And that might be a bit tough. I'll leave that in the position of the chief. And if I can go on with my other questions, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So naturally, looking at this at 5.7%, I was really happy with this board at the 2.3% on the contract, because I know that's most of our costs. But at 5.7%, I immediately cringe, and I'm sorry for being late here. Everybody knows I was in the snowstorm in Buffalo, and my train stopped in Syracuse, and I had to Uber it from there to Buffalo last night, and it was a mess in Buffalo last night. My wife wanted me to stay in a hotel in downtown Buffalo. That doesn't happen. So regardless, I read this in the back of an Uber vehicle going through this on it, and I got to tell you, this is a great report. I don't like the 5.7%, don't get me wrong, but this is laid out so well, Chief. My compliments to whoever did it. Who did this report? Laura?
That'd be Miss Laura Rulo, yes.
Laura, compliments to you, because this is a great report. You hit everything that I want to challenge or question on it, and I think this board should be proud of you for this. But and there's no doubt, when you mention child exploitation and technological internet crimes and that, we know that people can relate to that with the arrests that have happened in this region, and that's great on our police service for doing it, and more so on all the other things that have happened with I won't go into it, the crimes that have happened that we weren't prepared for. This is a different game than when I was chair, and it'll be a different game 4 years from now with the next chair or whatever on it, and it has to be assessed according to that. So these people, these stupid people that say defund police and that, unless they have a better alternative, I think this is a great report from you. One comment that you made that really hit home to me, and you have never, ever, none of you three have ever talked about the quality, never challenged the quality of this service. You've stood up in front of it, and we should be in that. But when you mentioned the words decreasing quality of crown briefs as a result of stuff, that really hit home on me. I've never heard you talk about the quality of any of our members here, and that there's reasons for that. And that's why we should be funding some of these things for that. That bothers me when I don't. It's different when you say we need an armored vehicle, we need this and that, because something might happen. But this is reality on things like this. And I'm proud of you for saying that, because that took a lot for you to use those lines. Decreasing quality of crown briefs by our service. People don't understand. That makes convictions turn to non-convictions, if that's the wording I should use. That hurts us all on something like this. It's one thing to arrest, but not to get a conviction because of a decreasing quality of crown briefs. That bothers me greatly, and that has to be solved on it. The 5.7%, this will go to council. You'll have the usual stuff. I imagine this will be approved by us, but it'll go to council, and you'll have your usual people saying that you can't do this. But my question to you is, and if you can answer it, I don't know if Laura has to, is federal grants coming to us, because I look at child exploitation, technological internet crimes, and a number of other things here. And I know, Chief, you mentioned about OLG funding grants from the province, but are we getting enough? You're going to say, you're not going to give me an answer to that, but what type of funding are we getting through you to Laura or whoever you think from the federal government on these things that are federal or can be solved federally? I think it's more than just us.
I'll have Laura come forward.
Just vague or whatever you want, Laura, but give me an idea, please.
Through to the chair, we get $10 million in provincial grant funding, but actually 6 million of it is for the court security
That's
and prison
provincial. I'm
transfer.
talking federal though, so.
Oh,
sorry.
nothing. We don't get anything from the federal. It all comes through from the provincial.
So if the chief wants to answer, if you don't mind staying there. So internet crime, child exploitation, that goes across the world. Kevin talked about it when he was an officer with the RCMP years ago. And that we get no funding for any of these type of crimes from the federal government. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, I hope that this board might consider pleading to people from the governing group up there, because we're getting hit hard in this budget because of things like that. On it, Laura, I'm done. Thank you, sorry. But I'm surprised. I thought you were going to say to me that we were getting $10 million, $20 million, things like this. We get zip on federal funding, and these are federal things that are across the country, and you're working together with everybody on this. I'm surprised.
I just wanted to clarify, we don't receive funding directly from the federal government. There may be some funding that flows through the federal government to the provincial government, which is ultimately transferred through grants that we receive through the provincial government. So we receive $10 million total from the provincial government. I'm not sure the breakdown of any funding that the province may receive from the federal government.
Well, I would hope, Chair, that this board might consider down the way of sending a letter to for them to ask how you can help us on this to the federal ministers. And if that's the reason they have, usually in politics, we are very proud to say we're giving a grant. If the feds are given to the province to give to us, I would think that we would know that. But you're more diplomatic than me and the way you explain stuff like that. You're too much a nice guy. But and I'm glad that Kevin brought up about, or Member Gibson brought up about the cost, because I'm afraid of the 2024 budget that comes into play, because that'll be 100%, like Laura explained, on the people we hire. Not to say that you don't need these people, but I don't look forward to that budget when it comes out. What else? I touched on that. Yeah, no, I won't go any more into the OLG funding. And I guess I'm going to support this budget. I know that's probably surprising to you at 5.7%, but I just know too much behind the scenes that we need it for us down here to exist. And if anybody stands up and say, we can't afford that, well, give us another way on this. So, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Member Gale. Any further? Oh. Got the chair, vice chair, and chair on this side. Member Eek.
With respect to the comments from Member Gale, certainly we want to be open and transparent through the public meeting, and I think you've delivered a report that just bears that out fully, and I commend you for doing that. I guess the elephant in the room, Bob Gale and members of council will know what at the start of the regional budgetary program, they usually establish some type of a guideline or a benchmark. And I'm sure the 5.7 is not going to be within the confines. Do we have that figure that we may relate to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have Mr. Todd Harrison from the region who is on the call, and I'm sure he could provide a summary of the guidance that was provided by Regional Council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for allowing me to attend today. Interesting discussion. Some of the things that I've heard are similar to what my experience in my previous role in Niagara Falls. I'm interested to hear that discussion, Chief. Well, we didn't do a guidance, we did a budget strategy, and we presented in July to regional councilors, and the direction was 4.7% to all of the ABCs. And so that direction, I believe, Member Eek, what you're coming in at is a little bit higher than that. But we also understand the inflationary pressures that the entire region is facing. The answer was 4.7. Plus, we had some additional capital that we included. We have a capital strategy, as you know, both at the ABCs, but also at the region. We have a significant challenge with capital infrastructure replacement. So there's an additional element of that. I believe there's a part of the additional capital budget request that is considered as part of the Niagara Regional Police. It was going to be provided to the regional police as well. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you very kindly for giving us that benchmark for the ABCs. Appreciate it.
Chair
Yeah,
Steele?
I think in the report that Ms. Rulo put in, I think that's identified in the report. So
Through the chair to Todd. Todd, just for public knowledge, how do development charges, how can they affect the police budget? Because as members have already said, with the increase of population in Niagara, the increase of development in Niagara, quite frankly, all across Niagara, where do development charges come into play within our budget?
So development charges, as you know, are generated for growth related project, growth related capital projects. So the capital projects, and I don't know right off the top, but I'll give you a general answer. The growth related projects that I think some of you are talking about with the growth of police services over the next years, the ability in general, the ability that's to raise DCs will impact those projects in the fashion that there may not be enough revenue generated to do those projects, and we would need to take additional. If the project comes in at $1 and 25% of that was to be DCs, and we only collect 10%, then the additional revenue that's necessary, or the additional funding that's necessary to fund that project would have to come from other sources of revenue. That's how it happens. So there are a couple, there are growth related projects that were built into our background study. And as you know, Councillor, Chair, sorry, the DC background study and the DC bylaw was approved just in August. And there are projects in that regard. And if the legislation that's proposed goes through as expected, then we'll be back at the drawing board on some of those projects. But it won't impact this year's projects, but future projects may be impacted.
I know you're right on this because you're a pretty good guru at all this stuff with DCs and our regional budgets, but really where the answer I want to hear, or I want you to answer, the question I want you to answer is the fact that development charges for policing sometimes can be a little bit different than it is for water sewer, because you're actually building a new plant or a new trunk line or whatever it may be, or we're building a bridge somewhere on the roads. But with policing, the human side of things, where we have to go out and hire new officers because of growth. So with that may come more vehicles, more office space if they're within the confines of a building. Can DCs affect those type of investments that the police service makes based on growth? Or is it just simply a car, a bridge, a new sewer plant, etc.?
Well, development charges are not collected. Chair Steele. The development charge is not collected to offset operating expenses. So it would be those types of capital expenditures that you mentioned: fleet, additional space, equipment that's related to capital equipment that may be related to additional officers. Those are the types of things. I know Ms. Rouleau from her side could give you more specific answers of the areas that it's been funded, but you're generally right. It's not to offset operating expenses. That would be just like any other regional service that's expanding, and we have a number of them. The additional funding would have to come from the levy or other operating results, but not DCs. The one challenging thing that's in this new legislation too, is the inability to fund DC studies and other growth related studies. Those are no longer going to be an expense that can be recaptured through DC. So that may have some impact as well.
Yeah,
Chair.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Any further questions? I just wanted to ask one, and it related to the fuel rate increase. I know it's gone up substantial. Is the service looking at hybrid vehicles, electric vehicles? Because over time, fuel costs are continually going to be going up. Is there an opportunity there to have any savings? I know we're limited in terms of what vehicles we could purchase, and there's a buying group that we do. But is that group looking at, like I said, electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles, ways of reducing the fuel costs? Is there anything being discussed regarding that?
Through you, Chair, we have had a few hybrid vehicles within our fleet, and I just spoke with our inspector who oversees fleet services yesterday, in fact, and we have not realized the savings that one would expect from hybrid vehicles. They typically are more expensive than a gas vehicle to purchase. And the savings or fuel efficiency that I think largely because of the type of driving that our vehicles are involved in, where they're operating 24 hours a day and they're often idling for extensive periods of time. You're not maximizing or leveraging the hybrid portion of the vehicle the way you would if you were driving in slow speeds within the city on a regular basis. So the short answer to that is that we have not realized the cost of efficiencies from hybrid vehicles. Obviously, as we start to, and the other part of that is that hybrid vehicles are becoming more and more difficult to acquire due to supply chain issues that we're experiencing all across North America. So we are not looking to replace our fleet of vehicles with a fleet of hybrids at this point in time. As we start to see more dependency on electric vehicles going forward, that's obviously going to be a discussion, and considerable infrastructure costs will be required to house a fleet of over 300 vehicles. There'd be a lot of charging stations that would be required to be implemented at some point in the future.
Well, thank you for that answer, Chief. I was just wondering if that was being looked at, and you've explained that you are, which I find very helpful. Thank you. Any further questions at this time? See none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of the recommendation on the floor? Those opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, Chief, and your staff. Excellent job bringing that forward for us to deliberate. And most of our questions were answered, so you did an exceptionally good job. At this point in time, we move to item number 7, which is any new business. Just looking at the members, if there's any new business to put on the floor for our committee. Seeing none, moves us to adjournment. Do we need a motion? No. Okay, so I guess we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, and we appreciate your support.
Guys, we'll take a 15-minute break before we get into our public meeting.